Hello, and welcome to our conversation on Naturopod Live. I'm excited to have you with us today. This is a conversation platform for education leaders to share experience and ideas that inspire each of us to really envision what's possible and to put action behind that inspiration. My name is Bridgitte Alomes. I'm a mother, a dancer, a nature lover, and the founder and CEO of Naturopod. Thank you for being here with me. As we chat today, I invite you to join the conversation by commenting or providing questions in the chat box. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Suzy and Amanda. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, as we get started, I'd love to start with you today, Suzy, and I would love you to tell our audience a little bit about you and the work you do every day.
Yeah, so I am from Red Deer, Alberta in Canada. I'm a mom, like Bridgitte said. She is as well, except my children are younger. I've got a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old. So I am very much in the early childhood spectrum of life, both personally and professionally. I'm the director of education at Creekside Creative Academy, which services children in a childcare setting from 12 months and up. And then into school programming through a private accredited funded school here in Alberta, up to grade 3 this year. And next year we go to grade 4. So I have the joy of directing all of the educational rooms and teachers and amazing staff that we have there, and also teaching as well alongside that role.
Wonderful. And Amanda, tell us a little bit more about your role and why you love where you work.
Yeah. Well, I do love getting up every day to go to work, which I don't know if I've been able to say at any other time in my over 10-year teaching career. I teach kindergarten at Creekside, and I am the acting admin. So I've been on board right since the get-go, and it's been pretty great to watch it grow and expand already this year.
Wonderful. And how many years has that been for you, Amanda?
How many years teaching?
Yes.
Well, I took some time off in between with my kids, so probably about 12 years teaching total. But.
Wonderful, but I'm sure you were still teaching and educating during that time. Yeah, it's a constant flow. Education never stops in my work. Well, let's start with telling the audience a little bit about both of you in terms of, Suzy, what brings you joy and lights you up?
Yeah, I get joy, and I guess my love language per se, because I know that that's a big conversation right now, is feeding off of people. So I take my close relationships very, very seriously, and making sure that people are comfortable and that they're thriving. That's important to me. So I see that through our staff at the center, through our family, through all of the children that we serve and the families that we serve.
Beautiful. And yourself, Amanda, what brings you joy and lights you up? I know you're a big relationship builder yourself. Anything else you'd like to add to that?
Just spending time with people that are important to me, and getting outside and being active with them. So my own kids are 10 and 9, and we like to do lots of things outside, but also working at a forest school, I really enjoy spending time outside with our children.
There's a common theme with both of you around community, connection, relationships. That's a really beautiful bond that you have that as a part of your team. And that's wonderful, Suzy, that you're really fostering that and you embody that and bring that empowerment in spirit out of Amanda. So I think, for us, it's like, going back into the life of a student and educator. And part of this for us is learning a little bit more about what does it look like to incorporate authentic learning experiences from your experience and work that incorporates that both indoors and out. What does that look like in the day of a life as a student and an educator?
It's interesting because Amanda and I spend a lot of time in that conversation piece when we plan for what all of the children are doing and how we kind of offer that professional development to our staff and to our families so that they understand. When you walk through our doors, there's not the typical craft experience that they're all sitting down and doing. There's not worksheets that we're making them all fill out at the same time. We really focus on that community piece of it because we're all part of that community that Creekside community that we're a part of. However, we also have to honor each of those individual developmental spectrums that each of our kids are on. So even though we only service children in really a relatively small age gap. I'm between 12 months and 9 years old right now. They're all at very different stages of their development and what their gifts and talents are. So we focus a lot on small group and individual learning as well, and setting them up for success for that. So we give them the vocabulary, the knowledge that they need to be able to be in a safe space that they can experiment with stepping outside of their comfort zone and knowing that we are a safety net behind them and they can ask questions so that they can grow in that safe community space.
Wow. And how did you come to that realization that that was an important approach? Was there a moment in time in your life that you went, this is the way I want this to be done?
Part of it was being a mom and watching my own oldest daughter start through kind of the school process in preschool. And I was going, hold on a second. Everything that I'm a brain development kind of geek and nerd, things weren't aligning for me. I'm going, that's not what's important. And when you start to ask parents what's most important to them for their kids, it's not that they know their alphabet. It's not that they read. 99% of the time, a parent is going to tell you, I want them to be kind. I want them to be happy. I want them to be successful. And so we have to honor the time that those kids are in, even though they're 4 going to kindergarten next year when they're 5 per se, they're not in kindergarten yet. So we shouldn't expect that kindergarten behavior. And those 9-year-olds that are going to be 10 are going to soon be teenagers. We don't need to treat them like teenagers already. They're not just scaled down adults. They are a child, and we need to honor that part of their life that they're in.
Interesting. And for Amanda, what would you like to add to that in terms of your role as an educator? What does it look like for you to incorporate that authentic indoor and outdoor learning in a daily practice?
Well, I think I really saw the value of that with my own children as well. When we homeschooled, both my kids went to public school for kindergarten, and then we homeschooled for grade 1, 2, and my oldest in grade 3. And I just really understood the importance of authentic learning experiences and how we can really foster their interest in their learning through combining indoor and outdoor learning. So we're really able to, even though we have a curriculum to follow and we have maybe a study that we're doing, we can really work in their interests and their developmental levels in that way.
Wonderful. And it's sounds like the 3 of us have a lot in common. I mean, Natural Pod started for me because of my son, and wanting to create something special for him and his experiences and that authentic learning. I actually homeschooled for a few years as well, because I couldn't find anything that I felt that really offered that authentic experience. But I think, when I state this goal, and this is something that I really would like to try to find the elevation point for, right? Which is when I state the goal, all children should have access to an environment that helps them thrive, right? That's the overall statement. What does that look like to you? Which one would you like to start? I know it's a big question, but I do believe that all children, no matter where they are located in the world, should have an environment that helps them thrive in their unique learning. What does that look like for you, and how do we create that?
I think a lot of the times there's a norm in Western kind of education in that they go to school and it's that industrial model and they're supposed to come out meeting this goal, this goal, and this goal. And that's how we measure success. And we're in such an instant gratification society right now that we want the answer right now. And COVID, I don't want to bring it up a whole bunch, but at the start of it, I can remember driving home from work and there was families out for walks and they were at the park. And I was like, this is a reset button on being over-programmed and just stopping and enjoying the moment. And I mean, after 2 years, we're kind of tired of that. But there was some value in that and not having to have every moment of every day programmed and just allowing adults, children, moms, dads, grandparents to be who they were in that moment, because that taught us to rely on those relationships. And so we've grown from that. And I would say that part of what we do, and I think, Amanda, you would agree, is that we really bring it back to those close relationships. And our center has the opportunity, we have a wait list that's very, very long. Right. And we were very careful, even though we're expanding in September, that we can't expand over and above what allows us to still be a close-knit community and allow that personal connection, because then you can't honor what each family brings and what each child brings to that. So I think you have to be very careful and calculated with everything, from the environment that you create, to the schedule that you create, to what you offer, to the staff that impact it, to the families that are brought through the door. You're really creating that safe and sacred space for everybody that's involved in that.
Wonderful. Amanda.
Well, before I taught at Creekside, we lived in Pincher Creek, Alberta, which is very, very south and very, very windy. And I ran a preschool out of a public school there that was Reggio inspired and followed the same philosophy. And so that access to public education provided an opportunity for a wider range of families, for sure, than what we can serve in our center, because we want to keep that small. But I was still able to bring those aspects of natural and outdoor learning into the program. And I think you just have to be really intentional about the materials that you use and the activities that you provide, and have more of a mindset of offering opportunities of learning to children rather than forcing learning, especially with our younger populations. So I was teaching 3 and 4-year-olds in the preschool there, and there was never an activity that I forced everybody to do, except for just our small group or our whole group meeting time in the morning. And even that was really short, and we grew that as the year went on. So I think that you can be really intentional about the things that you use and the activities that you let the children explore. So.
Wow. I mean, I love the intentionality. I think that's a part of the process, is really getting clear on what are you trying to create? What are you trying to hold? And Suzy, you mentioned that about holding that container. And I think that's a part of becoming a parent, that you really learn to hold the children that you have in your life, unique beings, and they're all different. And I didn't really get this until I had, 2 different children of my own. I went, oh, they're different kids. And then I'm thinking, imagine that times 25 or 30, each child brings something different to a learning environment. So one of the goals of Creekside Creative, and you have amazing goals, as a team, and I want to really commend you for really holding those goals in place and making that happen. It's not an easy task, right? Just so to remember that, to really take that gratitude of that place. But one of the goals that you have is to offer an opportunity for students to develop into creative, confident thinkers. And that's something I personally love when they're transitioning into elementary, that they are confident, they are creative, they're self-regulated, right? So how does the environment and education support them in this opportunity? Can you share a bit more about that?
Yeah, I think we spend a lot of time talking and role modeling with children about how they could solve problems at the start of a school year. So instead of giving them the answers and telling them what to do, we really set them up for success, and we ask a lot of questions. So I might say something like, you could say, or how do you think you could solve that problem? Or I wonder what would happen if. And so I think setting children up for success that way enables them to understand that it's not the teacher's job to give them the answers, that I don't know everything. And that's something that I've had to figure out really fast in my teaching career and homeschooling my own children, is that I don't have all the answers. And you might be interested in a topic that I know nothing about, but that we can work together to find the answers to your questions. And so if we can set children up to be confident learners and know that they can find the answers for themselves, that adults don't know everything, they don't have all the answers for them, but that we're more of a guide in their learning, I think that's a really important part of our program.
Beautiful. Suzy, was anything else you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, and I'll use Amanda as a example here. Writing for little people is a very hard sought after goal of parents. I mean, it's a measurable success item that when they can write and they can read, we know that they have those skills. And having to do that ongoing documentation, that we're building those foundational skills to get there. Amanda creates a very safe space for the kids. So going back to that intentionality, everything in our room is very planned out. There's not an item on the shelf that hasn't been thought of with purpose to be there. There isn't an item of furniture in our rooms that does not serve a purpose to our method and our pedagogy that we engage in. And Amanda's very clear about setting up opportunities for them to write. So there's clipboards in the room, for example. There's a writing station that kind of changes. We don't do themes. We don't do big holidays and that unless the kids bring it up as an interest point. But even I can think back to a point in the year when Amanda just happened to put folded pieces of construction paper with small pencils and just a few words up on the wall, and it's some stamps, and it was around Christmas. So kids are seeing kind of Christmas cards and those types of things filter in. And sure enough, it was really the first time that we saw all of the kids sit and take a chance at writing, and there was no correction on it, and there was no wrong answer, and whether they just decided to stamp on it and say, I'm done. But then they started to look at their peers and go, oh, you wrote that, and that word says dear, so I can copy that word. So then we were starting to have transferring and copying of environmental print. And then sure enough, they started to be like, well, I need to sign my card in my name. Well, we didn't need to supply a worksheet to show that they could show what their name was and knew what their name was. Instead, they started to be able to write it themselves. And it was just that snowball effect of, I'm not being reprimanded for trying. There's no wrong or right answer here. I can ask for help, and I'm not going to be told, well, you should already know that. Amanda and all of us strive to create that safe space for them to trial and error that out a little bit.
You know, when I'm hearing both of you communicate, I'm thinking this is just how life is, right? It's trial and error. And when there's a problem, you go, well, what options do you see? Right. And life is a journey. So why not create that from the very beginning to where they're at now, because that's how it's going to evolve. And to be creative thinkers, they've got to come up with problems and find solutions and figure it out and ask deep questions, open-ended questions. You know what I mean? And I love that, because for me, as you know, as my journey of life continues, I realize just how important it is to keep thinking about, there are other options you can see. There are other ways to think about something, and there isn't a right or wrong. Now, coming back to that, talking about personal experiences, both of you created learning environments. And I want you to think back from the very beginning, you know, was it like, here's an interesting question, like looking back, what would you do differently now? Knowing what you know today, what would you do differently starting up at the very beginning?
Well, at the very beginning of my career, I would have taught differently. But it was quite a while ago that I did my education degree. So the pedagogy wasn't quite the same as it is now, and the research wasn't really there. But I would definitely have changed things back then, starting out teaching, just to have it be more authentic learning experiences and more project-based learning, and more having children find the answers for themselves. And I think as I developed in my own teaching and pedagogy, that really came into play with my own kids. And I was able to transfer that into my work now to teaching at Creekside. So I don't know exactly what I would change from the beginning of this year, because I just feel like things have really gone smoothly, and it's been really exciting to see the children grow. We were just talking this morning about a student who didn't know any letters in his name when he first started, and now like this morning during free play, he was just, how do you spell this word, and how do you spell this word, and I just write it on a sticky note and he copies it. And just to see the progression with his learning has been so exciting.
Beautiful. Suzy?
I think similar to Amanda, going way back to the start of my teaching career, I was the person, and I'm like embarrassed to say it now, but it is a journey. I was the person that had the bright bulletin boards and had like 6 different seating arrangements that I would change up weekly, so it was exciting for the kids and all of those types of things. And I had like my language arts block and my math block, and we had those silos of learning that the bell rang, we have to switch gears now to math, even though they might have been really interested in a science experiment that we were doing. And I think it's allowing yourself and trusting yourself enough as a professional to pause and to just allow it to happen, and to allow that learning to unfold. And we're really the guide rather than the holder of all the knowledge, teaching the kids how to ask the right questions, how to find the knowledge, because then that serves them beyond our classroom, that serves them in the real world, that serves them at home, and being able to really apply the knowledge rather than just to that one conversation piece. That's when they truly and authentically know the information. And that's when we've met our goal. I learned to, when I talk about those bright colors, now if you look at our center, there's really no bright colors found in it. Everything is very neutral, very home-like, very calming. And there's just bursts of kind of rainbows kind of placed throughout, because when there is color, it's just complementary. It's not like we have a bright red wall and a bright orange bulletin board and different of those different kind of educational reproducibles that are all up to make it look pretty in the moment. But it has that regulation piece to the kids so that they can focus on what they're learning and they can settle into what their day looks like. It's not, the kids settle a lot faster and they're not automatically heightened from what's going on around them. And I think part of it is stepping back, and it's not about you, the teacher, it's about the kids. So when I've had the privilege of setting up a lot of classroom environments, and I always really, really stress to educators, I'm like, whatever age you teach, get down to their level. And I want you to stand at the classroom door and take a look around. What do you see? If it's huge shelves and it's things that are overwhelming from that little person's point of view, you have to change it. If it's curtains roping off and blocking off supplies, that's about you as the teacher. It's not about the 24 kids that you're teaching at that point in time. So that's always step one when I'm creating an environment, is to look at it from the majority of the room, which is the kids' perspective, because it has to be about them. It's not about you.
Even in this conversation today, something that I have just learned for myself is the word guide. I love that, guide. But also the reinforcement of how important it is to think about, it's not about you, but about the children that you're serving. And that conversation needs to come up more frequently. And to really reinforce that they are the most important critical thinkers. They are our future, right? And I feel I love that the guide. Thank you. I'm gonna use that from now on. But looking at the environment you've created, I feel like we never reach the point where it's all done. Right? I don't know. Even in the work that we're doing, I feel like there's always more that we can do. Right? We always want to keep improving. So what are you focusing on right now, and what are you currently prioritizing in terms of your learning space, the indoor and outdoor experience? Is there anything that you can share with our audience today?
I think that our outdoor space in Alberta changes widely. Right now, we're going through a seasonal change, and Amanda and I, the other day on the way up to Forest, were like, look how green it is. And then we were laughing because we're very serious about going outdoors. And the other day it was starting to lightning and thunder, and this storm had blown in. And our childcare workers were getting set to go outside. And they said, do we still have to go outside right now? I'm like, no. Like, we're serious about going outside, but safety is first and foremost. But I mean, when it's minus 30, we go outside. And the environment itself outside offers its own teachable moments, and how we can engage in it. The kids have started to pick the dandelions out of the field, and they've started to do all of those things. And winter offers different opportunity. Within our space, I think one thing that's kind of unique to us is that the items on the shelves and that don't really change. Where they are within the room changes. From room to room, it can change, because we've set up a center that is very interchangeable for items, because it's all loose parts. It all looks kind of the same. So those corks might move from one room to a different room that didn't have corks, and instead it could just be the wooden gears that move, and we do a trade. Or some of those big items could change rooms. But all in all, they're not walking into a completely changed around room. We're not setting them up for, whoa, like what has changed in here? So it allows them to continue their play plan. It allows them to continue that journey of learning where they were, without us upsetting the apple cart, as to say. We're always on the lookout for new things and how they can be used. And we learn from each other. That Amanda might pick up an item and use it somewhere, or a kid might pick up an item. We're like, oh, never thought of using it that way. That's always interesting. And then, of course, you set out those provocations for those kids to kind of prompt their learning a little bit as they're learning to engage in that way with loose parts. But they never cease to really amaze me with what they can come up with.
Yeah, amazing, isn't it? Amanda, what about you?
Yeah, it's been great to have the same items all year, because there's a certain item that the children have been playing with all year long. And when we first got them, they were a big hit, and then they kind of took a little break, and we're noticing that they're all using them again just very recently. And the way that they build with them and the play that they're doing with them has changed and evolved so much. So I think if you're constantly changing items out, then they don't really get that chance to be critical thinkers and to take their learning further. Whereas you know, it's not something that I said, well, why don't you build an excavator? But they're seeing our permanent location being built, and they're seeing all this machinery, and now they're building these items, and it's not, you know, it's not something I've had to prompt. So I'm often they're teaching me things. And, you know, one child said the other day, this is the grappling hook on my, and I was like, I don't even know what that is, but that sounds great. Teach us more. Tell me more. So it where, like Suzy said, where we have the items changes, how the children use the items changes. We do bring in some other things based on the study we're doing. So for example, right now we're learning about seeds, and that's where the dandelion picking is coming from. You know, we're watching the dandelions started as closed blooms, and then they started to open, and now they're turning into white dandelions. And so they're collecting them, and they're, you know, we're exploring lots of different things about seeds. So we can bring in those kinds of things that switch up, but the main materials in our room stay the same, and the children just change the purpose for them.
I love that, because I think a lot of educators feel this pressure to keep it fresh and keep changing and keep adding more and more. But really, it's about placement and flexibility and giving space and time for that open-ended creation, right? And that can happen over a period of time. And when we put things away and bring them back out, maybe that idea has changed and shifted, right? So bringing it back to the kids now, obviously, you know, we're all doing this work because it is really about the children. I would love to hear from both of you. Have the children in your care shared a reflection to you personally about how the space makes them feel and what matters to them? And can you share any of those stories with us today?
Yeah, I think we've heard more than one child say they love coming to Creekside. They're sad when it's a PD day and they don't get to spend the day with us, or that, you know, they're sad. I have a linear calendar on the wall, and so I write no school on the weekend days. And like, oh, it's the weekend already. So they obviously feel very comfortable in our space and in our care. And one thing we do that helps them feel comfortable, I think, is bringing in family pictures. So that's part of kind of the school supplies that we ask for, is like an extra change of clothes and a picture of their family, so we can have those around the room. And I think that's an important part of keeping children comfortable. So we've had a new child just start with us in the last few weeks, just moved to Red Deer, and that on the second day I said to her mom, I think she needs, could you please bring in a family picture? Because we find that a lot of children, especially at the start of the year, use that for comfort. And so if they're missing their parents, then that's just a way to bring the families in and have them be involved. So.
Beautiful. Suzy?
One thing comes to my mind, and it's exactly what Amanda said. The family pictures are huge to us, and making sure that the families are included and it's their space. One of the funniest things that speak to about the space, and I would say we have a very affectionate group of kids that are with Amanda this year, and the class has grown over the year, and we started with one table with benches around it. And that was important to me because I wanted them to be a community rather than desks and sitting in those desks facing front. We wanted to establish a system and an environment that conversation could happen. It echoed the family dinner table, all of those pieces. And so at the start of the year, we had one table with 4 benches around it that they would sit on. And I mean, you can fit 2-3 kids on a bench, and they were fine and they were happy. And sometimes we had empty benches because they'd sit close. Well, after Christmas, we got an additional table because our class had grown. And I mean, they're starting to do more work on the table that they'll source out, and they'll kind of seem that they want to spread out a little bit more. So we got another table, and it was in there when they came in one morning with an additional 3 benches because we made it like a farmhouse style table. And Amanda and I stood back and started laughing at Snack because they didn't say anything about the new table. But we had 3 empty benches because they all still felt like they had to sit so close to each other, and they didn't want to like detach from each other. Like it was like, no, I'm just going to still sit next to you, and I don't need that extra table right now. So it's funny because I think that speaks volumes in watching them and their attachment to, well, no, this is like my comfort space, that these are my people and this is my space I'm in. And thanks for the extra. And I mean, they have spaced out now, but it was just kind of funny that, well, we'll give them more space. And then it was like, well, we don't really need that.
That, you know, I love that because they want to connect with each other. They're so capable of making these decisions. They're so capable of deciding what works for them. And often we separate them because we think they're going to distract each other.
Yeah.
And if you hadn't have allowed for that opportunity, you wouldn't have witnessed that beautiful, magical moment, which I'm sure is one of thousands of moments that you've seen as educators. That's very precious. So if you were to share, and this is something that I find that a lot of educators are going to be watching this show today and going to be very inspired by the work that you've done and the journey that you've both had in your careers. But if you were to share 3 key things that you think will truly make a difference for where educators can start today in terms of creating a space where students can thrive, what are those 3 things? And who would like to start?
Suzy.
Not an easy question, but I'm trying to really simplify it and narrow it down for them.
Yeah. So without any like financial obligations, time commitments, those types of things, the first thing I would say is change your perspective to let go of what you as the educator want to happen and frame it from the kid's perspective. That's first and foremost, because until it's actually the kids at the center of it, it's not going to change. The second thing I would say is let go of the control of it. I don't want to sum up all educators, but I know a lot of educators, including myself, were kind of a little bit of that OCD control freak type, because we want things to go well and we want the kids to be successful. Trust that the experiences that you are going to make and plan will guide them to where they need to be. And it's a trust relationship in between you and the children. And you just have to let go and believe that you are enough for them and what you can support them with is enough, and they will grow from it exponentially beyond what you can try and plan and put them into silos that I'm going to do these groups with these kids so that they get there. And the last thing I would say is really reflect on the environment and the schedule that you have. If you have things in your environment that are not serving the children, then get them out of the room because they are a distraction and they're not serving a purpose. So always ask the why. Why are we having this large group? Why is that on my shelf there? Why is this routine set in stone? What purpose does it serve? And if it doesn't serve a purpose, don't do it anymore and don't have it anymore.
Very wise words, Suzy. Thank you so much. It's beautiful. Amanda.
I should have gone first. I'll piggyback on what Suzy said. So I think less is more, particularly when you're starting out and trying to change your environment. I think you can be really intentional about the items you bring in, but you don't have to have 30 different options. Less is more, especially to start with. And I think really being intentional and thoughtful about understanding where the children are when they're coming to you. So developmentally, their interests and the knowledge that they bring, and working that into your planning is very important. And then I would say just setting up an environment where it's possible and encouraged to foster relationships with adults and between children, because I really think that's one of the most important things. And I can see that in our center as really reflected in each room, but also, it's possible in other communities and other schools and public schools. It's possible anywhere you teach. It's not strictly a Creekside philosophy. And I've been lucky. My children returned to school this year, and my son's teacher has been just phenomenal at creating that classroom community and building those relationships between children. And that's 10-year-olds. So it's not just preschool or kindergarten age children. It's, that can happen all the way up. So I think that's just such an important piece.
I agree. And I think it is really about a continuity of care, and that at the end of the day, this is not unique to Creekside. Everyone can have access to this. Everyone can do this work. It's really a conscious, intentional choice. As you mentioned, it's about guiding that experience. But one of the things that you've done, and I love this because, focusing on community engagement is a part of your overall connection to the children, the parents, and the external community within Creekside. What kind of feedback have you received from your community of the work that you're doing?
It's been extremely positive for the most part. The families that we have, it's so interesting because even when we think of within our center walls, we have the siblings because we have that unique setup in that the baby siblings get to see their older siblings that are in kindergarten. They give a hug and they continue on. But even those without siblings, they start to kind of have that little and that big buddy. And we have a seniors home across the street from us, and we took the kids over and we built snowmen that faced in towards the seniors' windows to kind of cheer them up one day. And so it's really being in a community like-minded, that we honor the parents, we give them daily updates with pictures and videos, because a lot of our parents are working and they can't volunteer. And I know that that's the scoop with a lot of schools with COVID. They don't want extra people in, but it's important that the parents know, because when the kids go home, oftentimes, especially with little ones, the answer is, oh, we just played, we did nothing. And that's where it stops. Whereas if we can provide the parents pictures, videos, feedback on what their child has done during the day, they can see who they're playing with. They can see what they did. They can see that, oh, look, they are sitting there and they are writing, or they were playing with these 4 children. And I was worried about the friendships that they were making, and if they did have friends. So that's important to us, to be able to connect with the parents daily in that way. I'm always at the school at the start and the end of the day. And some of our kids are there from 7:30 till 5:30. So Amanda doesn't get to see the parents all the time, but it's important that they feel like they've been able to check in with someone that has spent the day with their kids, or known. And then with the greater community, we would just do little things around even our building. We're in a building with a doctor's office and a kind of like fitness and massage studio, and there's optometrists and all of that in our building. So we really reach out to be a part of that broader community. So we went and we Christmas carol to each of the businesses, just one little song with the kids, and gave them a Christmas card that we had all made to say that thanks for being our neighbor. And then our junior kindergartens were doing a study, and we have a florist shop in there. So they went downstairs and they learned how to kind of arrange flowers. And then actually for celebration of learning with the parents, the floral shop gave our kids a bucket of flowers to wrap up and give to their parents when they came to it. And it's just little things like that, that it helps support and go beyond our 4 walls of our center within, and really reach out to the broader community. Our daycare kids ended up painting rocks, and then with inspirational messages, our childcare facilitators wrote on them, and then they took them around the neighborhood and left them in different kind of tree beds and that, so that it would cheer people up. And now when our older kids find them, they're like, it's a Creekside rock, and they get all excited about it. So it's just little things like that. And there was one time a man just was sitting in his truck as we were walking to the forest, and he rolled down his window and he goes, oh, a lot of kids you have here. And I said, yeah, just going for our outside time. And he said, my wife and I, we sit in our front living room and watch the children play. And it just makes us so happy. We pour our tea and we just watch them engage with each other. And it makes us so happy. And that's what we want to bring to the broader community. And I think that's what everyone should strive for, is to get these little people exposed to the world, rather than being so confined and restricted to being in that building for that many hours a day.
Wow. Well, Suzy, what I'm hearing is a lot of the little things actually make a significant difference. So just to put it out there, that all those things that you naturally do and you connect with your community, they are creating a beautiful sense of belonging beyond just to the center. So I really want to congratulate you on that. Amanda, can you add anything to that?
Well, I guess the only thing I would add is we invite in parents and family members and professionals from the community or experts from the community related to whatever study we're currently in. So we did a sports study earlier in the year, and we had lots of different parents and community members come in and talk to the children about their sports. And I think that's a great way to make connections too. And we had more than one say, can I come back in the spring and we can do this sport outside, or we can play this again. And the children are really excited about it. And so I think that's a great way to bring the community in and build another connection, is to invite parents in. And as well, we do a celebration of learning at the end of each study, like Suzy mentioned, with the junior kindergartens. And we had such great feedback about those celebrations. So it's a great way for the children to share what they've been learning and to kind of show off what we've been doing at school with their parents, but also for the parents to see like, oh, they really are learning things and developing, and it's not just play. That's the work of their children is play, and that they're gaining so much knowledge from it. So those celebrations are really important to our community as well.
Beautiful. Well, I'm hearing a lot of community engagement, the outdoor interaction, the intentionality of the environment. But what do you really want more at Creekside, Suzy? What's missing for you? What would you love? If you could choose anything, what would it be?
I think, and it's nothing but growing pains right now. We're in a temporary facility right now, and our rooms are a little bit disconnected. And I think that comes right back to what we've talked about, is the connection.
Yeah.
I just wish that we're in our new building that we're moving into in September. I was very, very intentional, and you can talk to our financial director about it, but there was no way about it that I wanted a big gathering space that all of the classrooms looked out onto. And it wasn't just meant to be this free-for-all space. I have this vision of kind of like a children's museum for it, so that parents can gather in there as they're picking up their kids, and the kids come out and they get to see the other kids, and just fostering that community rather than that disconnect that we have in between kind of two separate rooms across the hallway from each other. And it's our temporary space, and that's fine. But really what I think it comes down to is bringing that community even further together.
Yeah. And that's the real work of learning how to adjust to maybe an environment that's not the perfect situation, but how do you still work with what you have, right? And how do you create that gathering space? And a lot of educators are working in and around in urban areas, downtown areas, different buildings that are, not necessarily purpose built, and they have to get creative with that. And I really commend you for working around that, that challenge. Is there anything missing for you, Amanda, that you would love to see?
Well, just only jokingly, our name is Creekside Creative Academy, and we have no creek. So that would be something that's in the plans for the new building, but that's the only thing for me.
Okay, well, we hear it now. Amanda's asking for a creek, everybody. So hopefully maybe in 5 years' time, there might be a creek running through the building. That would be the first. I would love to see that. Both of you have really shared a lot of wonderful elements of your journey as educators and holders of space and guiders of space for the children. But, one thing that I notice, we talked about this earlier today, you're managing my team, my personal life, my children, my pets. It's easy to get swept up into whatever is happening around you, right? It's so easy to do that, especially in the last few years, and especially what's happening in the world right now. But how do each of you remember to pause and be present? Do you have any secrets you want to share?
I think the kids force us to, really. It's sometimes they'll say something and it's going off track, and you go to jump in as natural instinct, and you're like, whoa, hold on. And I think it's really a self-taught thing to be able to be okay to pause. And it's almost turning on your own filter, right? Of, well, hold on, don't jump into here and don't solve that problem for them. And don't be thinking about the million things I have to do when I get home. I think it's just one of those things to try and enjoy the moment. And when things get stressful and they get hectic, it's just kind of putting things in perspective, like, nope, I'm at work right now. These are the children that I owe my attention and my devotion to right now. We'll deal with that when we get home, or we'll deal with that once we come to that. Or, you know what, that's a next week thing. Let's focus on the time right now.
Beautiful. Amanda.
I think it's kind of built into our schedule too, is that we have those, we're not having to rush from one activity to another, because we have that flexibility in our schedule to just pause and see what happens. So.
Yeah. Pause and be present isn't always easy. And I love how you look at the children and go, okay, hang on a second, they're engaged in that. These things can wait. Mm-hmm. I know for myself, trying to really break it down to, the saying, it's a bit of a cliche, one day at a time, because tomorrow will be a new day. You can't live in the past. How do you remain present in these moments, in this precious moment, whether it's looking at a child or a tree outside or the new creek that's going to be added to Creekside in the future, right? That will help you pause and reflect. Yeah. So before we end today, I would love to know from both of you, what's next for you, for each of you? Is there something that, that you've got your heart's desire on beyond Creekside? What's next for you in your personal development and learning?
I think for me, it's sharing our journey so that we can better beyond Creekside's walls. It's handing that gift of knowledge that we've learned from, we've made mistakes, we've grown from, to other educators, whether it's within our community, whether it's in different communities, just being able to help them understand this is the journey, these are the mistakes we made along the way. You're going to have to make some of those mistakes yourself to learn from them, because every community is different. But just sharing that beyond our own center, I think, is really where the sightlines are for me personally. And for our center, we've always talked about being and adding that professional development piece to it, because we want to be able to share that with the greater community.
Beautiful. I think that's important. I think, I think some people may look at you, Suzy, and see the work you've done at Creekside going, well, she's got it all figured out. Look at, what she's created. It's perfect. Perfection, it doesn't exist. The journey is about learning each along the way. And the more that we can share those experiences with others, the richer our community and other educators can become. So I would love to support you in that, Suzy, for sure. Amanda, anything that you would like to add? What's next for you?
Well, I think I'm along for the ride for that for sure. But also next year, with us growing so much, we have a lot of new staff and family members coming into the building. So I'd love to help mentor and further the learning of those staff members, and just make sure those families are comfortable as they join us.
Wonderful. I think, both of you are really are role models for how to really connect with each other, build relationships with not only with your community, with your students, with the parents, but with the outside educational community. And I will absolutely support you in that journey, and cannot recommend that anymore. I think that is really well needed, to hear the voices of others, to share more experiences. And that's a part of Natural Pod Live, right? We come together because collectively we can make a difference in the lives of educators and students and our community by having discussions. So I want to thank both of you for joining us today, for sharing your stories and wisdom. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you both, Suzy and Amanda. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. And thank you to our audience for joining us and learning with us today. Find Natural Pod on your favorite platform and follow us for our next episode. Thank you to everybody, and take wonderful care. Bye for now.